Good evening, everyone. My name is Nolan Robinson, the host and moderator of the Shifting the Narrative panel. I'd like to wish you all a wonderful Martin Luther King Jr. Day as we celebrate safely with our families at home. Thank you again for joining me as we begin to shift the narrative surrounding social justice and activism as I sit here with four wonderful Evanstonian activists today. And before I begin this wonderful conversation with these four amazing women, I would like to acknowledge the wonderful legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which is the very reason we have this day. He contributed so much to the cause, and it was his dream that inspired the dreams of tens of thousands of people to come. And I would like to acknowledge that while he was the compass, there are many people who contributed after him and continue to contribute today, like these four people on this stage. So thank you for joining us, and I would like to introduce Kara Roseborough, Alexis Harris-Dyer, Sarah Bogan, and Katia Bell, four wonderful people that I am so excited to get to speak to you today. So first, I would just like to ask, how are you? And I know that might be a loaded question just with everything that's going on in the country today, but just talk to the audience and me a bit about how you're dealing with everything that's going on. And anyone can start.
I can start. I just really I deal with the days as they come. 2020 really showed me that you never know what's next. So you just have to keep it pushing and wake up the next day. And it might be something different, but I'm just going to have to adjust to it.
Mm-hmm. All about adaptability, not knowing what's going to come next, which is scary because it's you wake up and the feelings that you were dealing with the previous day could be bottled up for the next day, but then something else could happen, like a Capitol riot, for example, that gives you so much more to deal with. So thank you for that. Anyone else?
I would say I'm doing okay, too. And I think when that question is asked, everybody goes, I'm hanging in there, hanging in there. Every day is a new challenge, and I think as many challenges, as many reasons there is to cry and be sad, there's 1,000 more to be happy and to be rejoiceful over. Personally, my family hasn't faced some of the negative effects of just everything that's going on politically, health-wise, so I'm definitely blessed.
Yeah, and just with because this is a conversation on race and activism, but we are also acknowledging that we are in the middle of a global pandemic right now. You see the way we're spread out and everyone in the studio is wearing masks. How are you dealing with the pandemic as opposed to also dealing with everything against, everything with racial injustice in our country?
I think it's a lot all at one time, but I think one of the pros of being forced to be home and having a lot of extra time is it gives me personally a lot of time to read more and learn more about not only what's happening in our country and why, but in Evanston. And I think that's something we all should be taking advantage of with that free time, is continuing to educate ourselves.
Yeah, and Sarah, in that free time, you said you do a lot of reading. Are you discovering a lot about yourself as a person through that, as an activist, as a Black woman?
Yeah, I think we're all still growing, and especially I'm learning more about what it means to be an activist, that this is an ongoing job all the time, every day. There's something more that could be done that needs to be worked on, so yeah.
Yeah, and we'll dive into that word a little bit while we talk to each other, what activism is. And you're all activists in your own way, whether it's through Evanston Five for Black Lives or, even through teaching ballet, which has just been a very homogenous white community. Well, before I continue, can you talk to me a little bit about that? Tell the audience what you do and how you've navigated that very white space.
Definitely. I'm a freelance dancer, grew up studying ballet. I studied other forms of dance too, modern and jazz, a little bit of West African dance and tap, but ballet has really been my niche growing up and still today. And I'm also teaching ballet now. And from the time that I started to the present, ballet continues to be this really white art form in a really white space that, yes, has European origins, but now as a global art form should encompass all of the different cultures that it has touched, and we're still not seeing that. And so as a dancer, as a teacher, as a scholar, I'm studying to become a Cicchetti certified ballet teacher. I'm carrying all of that with me every day into the studio and into the classroom, just trying to embody the change that I want to see and help students bring that change with them too as they go forth into their professional careers and higher education.
Yeah, and I know firsthand just how important representation is because I'm a dancer myself, and growing up, I didn't see lots of Black ballerinos dancing. I didn't think that there was a seat for me at that table. So one, thank you for the work that you're doing in order to make more people see, hey, I do belong up there because I see someone up there who looks like me. So let's get to more questions. The first question that I wanted to ask you all, and I know that you all grew up in Evanston, and our relationships to anything adapt and change as we get older and learn more about ourselves and about our relationship to that subject, and the subject being the city of Evanston. So having grown up in the city, in many ways shielded from the injustices that many people of color have faced for decades, and living in it now, keenly aware of those injustices, how has your relationship to Evanston changed, if it has? And that can go to anyone. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I feel like the rose-tinted glasses come off a little bit once you grow up. If you leave and come back, whether it's for college or you just move elsewhere and you come back, because, you know, I'm sure you all can attest to this. Growing up, it feels like we live in such a progressive city, and this is the best that it can be. We are living in the most forward-thinking city in our area, in the nation, however you want to put it. And I think that narrative is put out there a lot. And then you can come back and see, or you just open your eyes and see, wow, we're still really segregated, or we don't have representation in really important offices that we need, or, you know, we have a Black superintendent for District 65, so like that must mean that the education system is fair and equal. You know, that those kind of false senses of security are really pervasive in this community, and it's really easy to hide them with good intentions, but not do anything with it with actual concrete actions.
Right. So in many ways, I think we grew up in a phrase, it's called, you know, beautiful facade. And, you know, we've been so accustomed to the beauty of the things around us and of this community. And while there are many great things about it, we have been shielded, you know, through our parents and, you know, just through being so young and innocent to the injustices that we faced. There's a play I was reading a couple nights ago. I did a reading at Northwestern, and it's called The Exonerated. And it was a joint production with the Center of Wrongful Convictions. And there's a line towards the end of the show, and it says, you know, why do we focus on the good when there are problems that we need to fix? You know, if a car is working great, you don't say, oh, what's working great about this car? You go immediately to the problem when you know you need to fix it. So I'm glad we get to dive into that a bit today with you all. So another question I wanted to ask is, you know, racism is not new. We all know what racism is. We've all experienced racism in our own ways. And it will continue to exist as long as there is an imbalance of power between white people and BIPOC people. And one can argue that because racism has been a foundation of this nation, this world really, since slaves came here in ships in the 17th century, that foundation can crumble because it holds us up. And with this, I want to ask you all, and all of you can answer this, how is this MLK Day different from the ones in the past? How is this moment different from the moments that came before?
I can start. Honestly, this is my first time probably even doing something for MLK Day. A lot of the time, they just tell us, like, oh, Black History Month is next month. Like, there's nothing that we can do for this day. And I feel like last year, I really opened myself up to learn more. And I knew it was my time to, like, learn more and do something with everything that was happening. So I feel like this time, I'm aware it's Martin Luther King Day. And I feel like a lot of people, like, with Martin Luther King, they, like, make it light. Like, oh, it's just Martin Luther King, but it's Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Like, he's important. Let's celebrate. Like, I think it's really important to, like, celebrate tomorrow. Well, today.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think for me, I think back on previous Martin Luther King days, even last year, but I think back to specifically my elementary days, And I remember that I went to Walker at District 65, and every year they would have a man come in and give the I Have a Dream speech. And I remember in kindergarten and first grade, I thought that was Dr. King. Like, I didn't understand what was going on. And then as I got older and even through high school, I would think about, like, oh my gosh, what if Dr. King were to rise from the dead and see where we are today? He would be so happy that I'm the product of a biracial family, that I'm in this school with all these different people that are of all these races. Like, he did it. Like, we did it. And it took a lot of, like, education and reading and stepping away from Evanston and then coming back, that if Martin Luther King woke up right now and saw where we were at, I don't think anything has changed from the 60s to now. Everything he was fighting for is exactly what we're fighting for right now. And I think about what his response would be if the modern form of the KKK stormed the Capitol. Like, and I think that the weight of this day, I have people in my personal circle who have openly admitted that they didn't know racism existed before Donald Trump was elected. And now they're disgusted with the country. So I think this Martin Luther King Day, it won't just be a day that's light and passes. I think people are being forced to look at what's happening in this country and whether they're white or black or another race, how they fit into the racial injustices that are happening.
Yeah, you said that some people in your life didn't know racism was a thing until Donald Trump became president. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's some people that just don't think it exists?
Well, when you have the privilege to not think it exists, why would you? Why would you change a system that works to your benefit? Why would you even consider what it feels like to be on the other side of something if it benefits you? And so if you have, just naming it, white privilege, why change anything if it doesn't affect you immediately?
I mean, and we also hear this word, this problem of systematic racism. I think that's where the problem starts, is it's in our systems, it's in our school systems, it's our jail systems, it's in every system in America is built on racism. It's built on segregation. It's built on discrimination. And so I think a lot of people, as you all were saying, didn't have to confront it because it was so intertwined into the veil of what we know to be every day. And so
then it's like, well, no problem exists because
right.
This is how we've
we don't
always
see
lived.
It.
Yeah.
And then it's like you have Donald Trump who gets on TV and says XYZ and XYZ. And it's like, oh, wow, we can't hide anymore. This big orange man is on TV, like, calling people out, saying that people don't belong to be in this, don't belong in this country. So I think that's why a lot of people, they just didn't have to, like you said, the privilege. It's just easier to be like, hey, I'm here,
Exactly.
I'm just...
I also think that it's a genuine lack of education, and that it's an intentional lack of education. I think we don't teach people accurate history, including myself as a black person. I didn't learn the truth until I got to college, and it was like a slap in the face of I've just been taught lies about. And it makes every single issue that we have today is intentional and makes sense. It's not a coincidence what's happening. And so I think for a lot of people, they think racism is like, I don't like you because you're black, and that's all it can look at. And so that's what being racist means, is like overtly showing hate towards someone because of the color of their skin, and that's not what racism looks like. Racism looks like the fact that we have a school all over Evanston except for the 5th Ward. Racism looks like redlining. It's discrete. It's the fact that people couldn't get housing, can't get housing. It's like you said, in our systems. It's not necessarily I don't like you because of the color of your skin, and that's really hard for people to come to terms with when they have to take on the burden of like, wait, I'm the problem here, and I don't even know what I'm doing. That's part of the problem. So,
I mean, and going along with that, I think racist, when you say it, everyone's like, it's like a tense word, as many other words in revolving around this movement are the Black Lives Matter movement, unfortunately. It's like these words aren't meant to put everyone on edge. It's just calling it what it is. It's calling a spade a spade. And so a lot of people don't like that word. I go to school in a very white, conservative town. And so if you were to be like, hey, that was microaggressive or that was racist, people would be like, I'm not racist. I'm not racist. It's like, okay, I just said, that was a racist statement
Right,
or a
yeah.
racist action. So, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of words, and I know that you both do lots of work for Evanston Fight for Black Lives, and one thing I did want to talk to you about is an issue that's just been ravaging the country everywhere. About defunding and abolishing the police, and it's a two-parter. Can you talk to everyone a bit about what your work with Evanston Fight for Black Lives consists of, and why do many people have issue with those words? We need to defund the police, we need to abolish the police, especially since they're not the lives that are being taken away from police officers. Why do they find so much issue with those words when they're not the ones who are affected by the very existence of police?
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time.
You can think about that. I would like to start off again by saying that Evanston Fight for Black Lives, they shouldn't always look at us to answer the defunding questions.
Mhm.
I feel like they should know already,
Yeah.
even though I guess they don't.
Yeah.
I guess they don't. But I feel like we're also a group of Black people. Anything we're going to say, they're going to push back on us about anything.
Mhm.
We're not asking for anything ridiculous. If you can see, how much Evanston police station is getting compared to any other group, like Parks and Rec, they're getting, three groups. I think it's, three, budgets in one that not Evanston Fight for Black Lives, but EPD has. Their budget is a total of 3 different budgets together.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's hard because you have this conversation, and it's not just with white people. I'm having the same conversation with Black people that they hear the word defund, and it's sirens go off. Like, oh my gosh, if we defund the police, what are we gonna do with crime? What are we gonna do with danger? How are we gonna catch the bad guys? And it's like, in reality, that's not what the police are doing. They're not preventing crime, and when you look at it, it's not what we're saying. We're still gonna have the right resources to respond to crime, to protect the community. There will be an alternative community safety system. It just won't be policing. And that's because policing is inherently racist. We know that. It was a system designed to catch slaves. And that badge that was designed to catch slaves is what current police officers wear right now. And that's been in existence for so long that in Evanston Fight for Black Lives, wholeheartedly believe it's not something that can be reformed. What we saw at the Capitol was police officers partaking in that, leading that.
Yes.
That can't be reformed. That's a huge issue. And so I think one of the big things is that it gets really personal. People are cops, or people have family that are cops, and they're like, but he's a good cop. And I say there's no such thing as a bad apple when the entire tree is rotten. I can recognize that there are good people who have a bad job. There are good people who are in a system that there's no way that they can be doing good when there's so much bad. And so what that means is, when we say the words abolish, that sounds crazy, but so did the words abolish slavery at some point. That was super radical at some point, and it had to happen. When we say abolish the police, that means completely dismantling this system while building a completely new one. That means having people who are qualified to respond to mental health crises. That doesn't mean sending someone with a lethal weapon. That's not needed in that situation. That's figuring out where there's need for community safety and putting people out there who are qualified to do so, and right now police are not. Hairdressers are trained for twice as long as it takes to become a cop. That's ridiculous. And what Katia is saying is the budget is astronomical. When you look at the resources we have in Evanston, human
Services.
Yeah, it's Human Services Department, Parks and Rec, Health. There is 4.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head, but EPD is 50% higher than all of those combined, and so there's an insane amount of money that could be coming out of that budget and being put into the community. We can even add on the fact that so many EPD workers don't live in Evanston. They're not Evanston residents. So that's Evanston tax dollars going out of our community. So I get that the words may seem hard, but part of that is Black people can speak for themselves. We know what we need. We are the ones that are being killed and beaten and harassed and are feared. White people are not. So when we say this is what we need a different system because this one doesn't help us, this just hurts us. What we don't need is white people turning around and telling us how to have a movement or how we should mobilize or how we should seek justice. Well, the word defunding it's just too radical. No, it's what you said, Alexis. It's calling a spade a spade. This system has too much money that's not doing any good. It needs to be defunded.
And what is, because you mentioned it, what do you think people mean by this is too radical? It's like change just doesn't happen with, it's like could you please do this? It's like every advancement that we've had in our society, whether race-wise or gender-wise, it came from radicalism. It's like people knew that they weren't being heard, so they had to go out and get what they needed in order to partake in our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they knew that the government and the Constitution didn't directly write them into it. So they're like, we are a part of this. We are Americans. We are human beings first. So we need to get this. And the tactics that they have done, from sit-ins in North Carolina to just marching on the street, everything has been called too radical. And and we reach a point where it's like, well, what is good enough for you? It's like, do you just, what you're saying right now is that I just need to sit down and be quiet. I just need to sit down and shut up, because that is the perfect type of activism for you if there's no activism at all. So, like, I
don't want to cut you off, but I think circling back to your original question of why is this Martin Luther King Day different, I think it's because we're in the moment. Like, this is our moment. We're shifting the narrative. Like, we're doing it. And so nothing gets, unfortunately, in our country, as we've seen, nothing gets done when we say please. We ball our hands up together and say, please, can we please do this? Can we please have this change? Nothing happens. And so that's why I think this moment is so powerful. This Martin Luther King Jr. Day is so monumental. It's because it's our moment. It's our time to lead as young people, as queer people, as BIPOC people. It's our moment. And
I also think that, like, we need to remember this is Martin Luther King Day we're talking about, and I have a quote saved from him that I think goes perfectly with what you just said.
You came prepared.
I came prepared. But I think we get misled. I've been misled that Martin Luther King is painted too simple to people, I think. It's one message of, if we just kumbaya and wish it all, like, it'll get better. If we just hold hands, it'll all get better. And no, he was radical. Yeah. Martin Luther King was arrested and jailed. Martin Luther King was more than what we get taught. And I think this quote goes exactly with what you just said, Nolan. He said, he wrote this from jail. I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is in the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And that is to say that Evanston, it's not Trump supporters, it's not conservatives, it's not Blue Lives Matter anti-black people that are the problem here. It's the white liberals, the white moderates who have a Black Lives Matter sign in their yard, but when it comes time to walk the walk, there's nothing. It's too radical. It's too much. And it's those uncomfortable conversations are, we leave politics, religion, and whatever at the door. You don't talk about that, right? Like, that's the mentality that people have, and that's problematic.
So I think and hopefully this conversation can lead to that, but it's starting to make the white moderates watching this uncomfortable, and letting them know that, hashtag activism, or, the small things that can be done at home, it's like, that's not enough. And who are you to say what we're doing is too radical if you aren't being affected by the very things we're fighting against?
Exactly.
Yeah. And it goes to a point I wanted to talk to you about, effective allies. You know, we hear that term all the time, you know, allyship, and, you know, I'm an ally, and, hey, like, look at us, we're allies, just an ally group of friends. What is an ally, and what is being an effective ally? And I think lots of the people watching this right now would say, hey, I'm an ally for the LGBTQ community, I'm an ally for the, you know, the BIPOC community. But what does that mean?
Well, to start, if you're an ally with the Black Lives Matter movement, it's not just, oh, I'm not racist. You know, like you were saying, I don't want to be racist. I'm not racist, but, you know, it's not that. It is, I am actively anti-racist. And what does actively anti-racist look like? I've had close friends of mine that I grew up with that were like, well, just because I'm not posting on social media or just because I haven't talked to you about it doesn't mean that I'm not doing the research and doesn't mean I'm not doing the work. I donated to this organization. I have a sign in my yard, or I put, you know, I did the blackout square on Instagram. So like, I did it. Racism is solved. I did it. I did the square. And it's like, no, but we're not having a conversation. You are not actively trying to be better and to make the people in your circle and our circles better. And if you are not going out there and educating yourself, if you're waiting for your BIPOC friends to tell you, hey, read this book, listen to this speaker, watch this news program, if you're waiting to be educated, that's not being an ally. That is like maybe a step up from complacency, and it's not good enough.
Damn, you were preaching to us today. You were preaching to us today, Kara. It's, you shouldn't have to be told what to do in order to know what to do. It's like, if you see what you know is wrong, and this is, you know, the issue that I have with many people in my life, it's like, I shouldn't have to tell you everything that's going on in the news. I shouldn't have to tell you how it's making me feel. Like, I wrote an op-ed this past summer, and I remember the very first lines of that op-ed were, lots of people have been asking me, how am I? What the hell type of question is that? I'm not doing fine. These are all the reasons why I am not fine. And just for people to need to sit back, I've been told by, you know, people that I am close with, it's, I didn't want to talk to you because I didn't know how you were feeling or how you were dealing with this, which, you know, I understand. But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to, you know, grovel towards you and be like, you need to help me out. Like, I am going through something, because I don't have the energy for that. You are not that person to me. But just to know you care a little bit about the struggle that we face every day in order to say, what can I do for you? I've had people over the summer call me and ask me, you know, Nolan, what can I do? Just be there for someone. Just be there for someone you know in your life who is being ravished by what's going on in the news. Not for one day, not to live for yourself, but to live for other people who have had to face a lot more than you have in your privileged existence. And I just hope more people realize that, you know, the struggles that I face. Well, you know, while everyone faces their own struggles, it's like, these people are going through a lot, and I'm benefiting from their pain. The more pain that they feel, the higher my pedestal gets. And I hope more people realize that. And I just got on my soapbox. I forgot what I was saying. But, you know, to me, being an effective ally is that. It's saying, how can I fight for you? Not just today. You know, one thing I was worried about with the George Floyd protests, it's because it was an explosion during the summer. Everyone was home. We were upset. We wanted to get out. The pandemic was big. Everyone was speaking out about it. Everyone on my timeline, people who I hadn't seen post in years, or people I didn't talk to, or people who I didn't even know knew anything about race, spoke out against it. And while it was fulfilling for me in that moment, my worry was, this is just going to be a couple weeks. This is going to be a couple weeks.
Like
it's
a
going
news
to die
cycle.
down. Exactly. It's like a news cycle. And then once the fires, you know, are put out and everyone goes back home, everyone's going to forget about this. And while I can confidently say that not everyone has forgotten about it, but am I wrong in saying that the fire that was behind it during the summer has died down a bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just kind of
Oh,
affirming
you're
what you were saying.
disagreeing. Yeah, and it's died down a bit. And I want the people at home to remember that being an effective ally is not just fighting when you see the headline news that a young black man, a young black person was killed by police, they got the wrong person. It's doing it every single moment. It's doing it in both those times, the very bad times, and also the good times where it doesn't seem like there's anything to fight for. Because, newsflash, there will always be something to fight for until we reach something called a post-racial society, which I don't think we will ever reach, and I do want to talk to y'all about that. But I took a class this past quarter called African American Politics, and it was about African American politics and how black people integrate themselves in the political landscape. And one thing that we did mention was Obama, and how when he was elected in 2008, everyone had thought that he would be this beacon of, post-racial, politics in the country, and that because we elected this black man, nothing would be about race anymore. And one thing that we discovered through that idea is that even with his policies, or even with him being the president, everyone made it about race because he was a black man. He was his
First.
Yeah, he was the first. He was his aberration. It's one question that we ask ourselves is, does him becoming the president mean that we're in a post-racial society, or is him being elected a bug in a system that is just perpetually racist? And will we ever see something like that again? And after him, we got Donald Trump. So was it people reinforcing the fact that him being a president isn't what this country is, and that Donald Trump is everything who we are? Or is Donald Trump the bug in the system, and Obama was getting to this, idea of this is who we are? So I want to ask you that question. Do you all believe a post-racial society can exist? Does it exist? Will it exist? That is a loaded question. So you can take your time to answer.
I personally, this is like something I learned in anthropology class about racial conflict theory, how everything is motivated by race. I wholeheartedly believe that a lot of things are motivated by race. I don't know if I'd say everything, but I'd say like almost everything. I believe in that theory. So I do think it's possible. I always have hope. Unfortunately, I don't think we will see it in our lifetime, but just the same way that Martin Luther King wasn't able to see what we have now, you guys can't see, but we're in a room full of different types of people, different colors. So Martin Luther King wasn't able to see that, but he still fought for it. He got us to where we are now. So I unfortunately don't think we'll see it, but I think we're doing the work towards our children being able to see it, and honestly, that's what matters.
Yeah, I want to...
go
ahead.
I think it goes back to the allyship. I think everything that we're talking about is interconnected, and I think if we ultimately want to see a post-racial society, that's not on us. It's not on us. And when we have these conversations, it's a balance of like, the five of us know. We understand what we're saying, where we're at, because we look the same and we've had relatively similar experiences when it comes to our look. But part of it is like, this is a conversation to draw white people in. This is a conversation for white people to listen for what you can be doing to better your community. And it's not like these hard, abstract things about, I need to make the world a better place. It's literally things that are happening every day around you in this town. And I think that's the first step towards a post-racial society, which I don't know if will happen because we're never ever going to get rid of different races. And I think that there will always be baggage that comes with that. But I think back to the ally question, there's a lot of tangible things that being a good ally means. And I know that it can be hard to hear, like, you should just know without having to ask. And you should like all these assumptions that, like, it's in white people's hands to just have the tools to be an ally. And I recognize that it might not be. Mm-hmm. But I don't know everything I know just solely because my pigmentation is darker than others. Yes. I wasn't born and then like suddenly got all this wisdom about what racism is and the issues that are happening in our society. No, it takes work and it takes commitment and time to educating myself, because back to you saying the word racism and being racist is a trigger word. Yeah, and to be an anti-racist, you have to recognize that you are racist. Mm-hmm. We are all racist. Mm-hmm. All of us sitting here are in the same society being conditioned by the same thoughts towards ourselves, towards other races, and we can't let that be like the end-all be-all. We have to eat that and take that and really self-reflect, and that's the biggest way you can be an ally, is to not critique our movement, not to say, oh, I support this, Black Lives Do Matter, but don't do that. Don't critique us. Don't critique what we're saying we need and how we want to get it. Critique yourself. Critique why you're having an adverse reaction to that. Critique why you're judging someone, why you feel fear in certain people's presence. Critique why you don't actually know what we're talking about, or critique why you don't understand this phrase or what this movement is supposed to be doing. And critique that every day. It's not like you said, I posted this, I'm an ally. No, every day for the rest of your life, you will have to be an ally and you will have to work towards that, just as we are all working towards how to navigate our racial identity in this society. And so
I will always have to navigate being Black.
Yeah, there's not a day that you can, unless you stay inside and don't interact with anyone.
Well, even then,
who knows? Yeah. But there's a chance that if you stay inside. But other than that, there's no way we walk into the world and aren't very aware of our skin color and what that means. And so white people should also walk through the world and be aware of their skin color and what that means. And I don't mean for these to be abstract things. I want to give tangible actions. And there's been so many instances, especially in the last few months, where I've wished I had allies. Yeah. And I have a lot of white people in my life, and I need more. And what that looks like is when we're in the same group or we're in the same setting and we get a text or a message or a post or hear something racist, don't wait for me to react. Yeah, obviously it pissed me off. But don't wait for me to be the one to tell you how to confront that awkward, because it's going to be awkward for me too, to be like, ooh, actually, it doesn't have to be rude, but that's what it is. Allies don't put the burden of confronting racism on the person who's just been inflicted by racism.
Yeah. It's like a constant, let me see if this makes you outraged first, and if it does,
you're
then
mad,
I'll be outraged about it.
Right?
Okay, you're mad about it, now I'm mad about it. And I want to touch on something that you said a little bit ago about the makeup of the people in this room. And I just want to address that, because I think growing up, we've all been taught about, diversity and inclusion and equity. And I want the people at home to remember that diversity and inclusion are two different things. Diversity could be the makeup of people in the room. But inclusion is, are all of these people being heard equally? Are all of these people's ideas and who they are and their identity respected in the room? I was a counselor at Camp Echo, and one thing that we learned during staff training was, diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. So I think that's a question that many people need to start thinking about is, do I ask people to dance, or do I just invite them to the party, hope they show up to make it look like this is an inclusive society?
I love that. I really love that.
Yeah, and that's what Evanston is. Evanston is very segregated. You can figure out what the makeup of the people who live in the houses, closer to the lake are, and the houses closer to Evanston Township High School. We are a diverse city, but we are nowhere near inclusive. We are nowhere near where we need to be if our pillars that we hold up so well in this city are diversity, inclusion, and equity. So I think people need to understand we're not perfect, and we're nowhere near perfect, and there is work to be done. So like I said before about a beautiful facade that we all grew up in, many people older than us are still living in that, and it's like, no, we're not there yet. And another question I had, so this summer, the ETHS boys basketball team painted a Black Lives Matter mural on Dodge Avenue, newly named Black Lives Matter Way, in solidarity and honoring the racial movement we've seen since the murder of George Floyd. I can already imagine your answer to this, but do any of you think this is enough? And if not, would you suggest that this symbolic painting does anything at all in moving the city forward towards their goals of diversity and inclusion and equity?
I want to start by saying this has nothing to do with the boys basketball team, but more of their, I don't want to say their coaches, but I feel like they should have had Black people from every sport, because I know ETHS has like a golf team. Where the Black golfers at? That's what we need to see. And like the Black swimmers, like there's so many sports at ETHS that they don't even tell the Black students about. You would have no idea it's even there. And I feel like if they probably would have showed the town that there are Black golfers and Black tennis players, then maybe we could have said that was a little change, but no.
Sorry, but I feel very passionately about this. For me, I kind of had a problem with it only being the basketball team. I mean, to begin with, the basketball team, I'm almost positive, correct me if I'm wrong, is predominantly Black, right?
Yeah. The chosen Black students at ETHS.
Yes. So why do we have Black students out there saying Black Lives Matter? They know I would hope they would know their lives matter. Why didn't we have the golf team? Why didn't we have the swimmers? Why didn't we have water polo? Why didn't we have badminton? Why didn't we have the people who should be allies, who should be saying like, no, I agree, Black lives do matter, let me show you. ETHS is on Church and Dodge, a predominantly Black area.
Someone mentioned, why wasn't it done in Fountain Square, where that's where all the white people live? But
I mean, and even still, just had it, say they chose ETHS, Church and Dodge, whatever, why, like, I think it would have been even more impactful had there been a group of white students in a predominantly Black area giving their time, giving their services. Why is it, again, always on Black people? And then on top of that, why is it always on Black men? I really didn't like that. I know that probably might not be a popular opinion, but I thought that I had a problem with it. I thought that other teams should have been out there, period. I think a lot of white people should have been out there helping do this. I mean, and again, also, you're painting something on the sidewalk or the street, thank you, but you can't even read it from when you're driving down the street. You cannot even read it.
I remember
you can
when I
see
was
it from
walking
a bird's
past it,
eye.
I'm like, I think this word is lives, and it ended up being Black, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is.
Yeah.
I'm like, which way does it go? Yeah, but yeah.
I mean, I was like, oh, when I first came back to Evanston after COVID or whatever, I didn't really know that it was happening, so I just thought it was like some lines, like directional lines on the street that the city had done. So I mean, it's not enough. It's not enough. Period.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
We all
yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
ready.
I think putting that mural like in a place like Fountain Square or somewhere that feels more central / more is going to get more exposure to the white community emphasizes that this is a city issue. This is a national issue. It's not a Black issue. Like you said, we all know our lives matter. You would hope that every Black child knows that your life does matter.
Sure.
But this is a reminder to other people and meeting the people that say, but all lives matter, that live here and elsewhere. Like that, those are the people that need to be exposed to that message. So it's like wrong placement, not enough thought put into it, not enough people rallying behind it, like people of all races rallying behind this, Black, white, Latino, Native American, everybody, Asian, rallying behind this message. Like that's what you want to see. And in a city like Evanston, that is so possible.
Yeah.
So
possible.
And I didn't go to ETHS, but from everything I've heard, ETHS is just a microcosm of, everything else happening in Evanston. So it's like, that is so possible at ETHS.
People just aren't trying hard enough.
No.
It's like, it's just the bare minimum, but it's like, you're sitting on a gold mine. It's like you can accomplish with one community event or whatever, much of what you've been trying to do. And by you, I'm talking to people on city council and, the people who do have a say in what happens in the city. And it's like, are you really trying hard enough?
And
I was
don't
gonna
just
say-
rush. I'm sorry.
No,
but,
you're fine.
Don't just rush to action. Like, it was a big time, like you said, over the summer. Like, everything was at a peak. It's like, okay, we don't have to just rush towards an answer. Like, think, sit down, think, ask, create a panel like this, and ask how we can, be helpful.
I think that it all ties into what, like, as you asked in the beginning, what we're learning, what activism is. And I personally I'm kind of neutral towards the street drawing, only because I feel like it was right after, like, tragedy after tragedy, and I think in a lot of ways people were just finding a way to heal. And maybe I really don't even know whose decision it was, or if it was the boys on the team who decided to do it, and this has nothing to do with boys basketball. It's just maybe that group was like, this will make me feel better about the trauma I'm experiencing. And so for that, I don't feel a way about Black Lives Matter in the street, but I think it does speak more to the issue, like the bigger issues and performative activism in general that's happening in Evanston. And I think I wish I could feel excited about it, but because there was no tangible action followed, it's literally just letters in the street. All right, cool. Like, I know I matter. I know you matter. Yeah. But I would love to hear that I matter and see that I matter, and we're not. And like you said, it's this, for me personally, has been a time I've never been more aware of what's happening with city council. I never paid attention to that before this. And now that it's on Zoom, it's super accessible. You don't actually have to go there and be there, and to know who's running, and that these people have been in positions for decades and very little tangible change has happened, at least racially. So I think for me, symbolic things are great if they're followed by real action. So
yeah, I feel you on that. And one thing I was talking to Tim about earlier is, and one thing I mentioned before is, the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and how he was the catalyst of this change, and how his dream inspired the dreams of so many other people. I want to ask you all, do you imagine right now we have a symbol like MLK, or do you think that catalyst is collective? It's all of us. Like, there isn't one person to look to, but that through rallying together, we are MLK.
I would say it's more of the latter, that it's, and I would say that makes it even more powerful than to, like, put all of that on one person. I think, like you were saying, there were definitely people that thought Obama would be that next, and not saying that Obama's not an incredible, political figure, but I think it's even more powerful to say, like, look at this Black Lives Matter movement and all of the people, all of the young people that are, like, stepping up and stepping into our individual and collective power. Like, that's the moment. That's the thing right now.
Right.
I also think what's awesome is when I'm thinking about how has activism changed from Martin Luther King's time to now, because I think right now we're in the most similar time to the 60s and 70s that we've seen. And what's awesome to me is that what was one man, and it really wasn't. We're taught that it was Martin Luther King doing everything, but there were plenty of other people who, all these unsung heroes who we never learn about, who were doing just as much. But I think the combination of technology and accessibility to other people's thoughts, rather than having one leader in the newspaper, and the biggest change is that what was one man is now women.
Yeah.
Every movement that's being led is being led by Black women. Yeah. Black women.
Stacey Abrams.
Time and time again, like, that's who's leading the conversation, that's who's leading the action, and I think that's awesome. And I think Black Lives Matter has almost replaced the individual, and it's everyone collectively pooling to push that effort, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I know with Martin Luther King, like, everyone looked at him like, oh, it is racism going on. And I think, like, with the Black Lives Matter movement, with the lives that were taken, I think that really, like, that what made us listen. Yeah. And that's what really woke us up to do something and, like, want to go out and do something, like Trayvon Martin. Like, that made us want to go out and do something. Like, we always knew about Martin Luther King, and we knew it was racism going on. I remember, I think Trayvon Martin happened around, like, 6th grade. Maybe I was in 7th.
We were in middle school.
Yeah. And, like, before, like, I wasn't going to no movement. There was no movements I even knew. Like, there was nothing. Really. So I think the lives lost really got us up and, like, want to go out.
And not only the lives lost, but lives that were closer to us in age.
Yeah.
And it's like, he could have been my best friend.
Yeah.
And he was shot and killed
Could have been
by
anybody.
not a police officer, but a man who just shouldn't have trying to
too
be the
much.
hero. Yeah, doing too much. But yeah, we had that connection, something. And I want to, turn that to the people watching this. They're, it's almost been an hour, and, they're like, well, I've heard all these wonderful points, and hopefully it really dug into the hearts of some people. But maybe they're missing the connection. It's like, well, why should I care, really? And hopefully there aren't many people like that in Evanston. I'm sure that there are. It's like, but why should I care about you? It's like, we're not related. We don't have the same issues. What do you want them to know? And of course, that's open to anyone.
I think that's so hard to answer because if they don't know what's going on, clearly you don't care. Like,
yeah.
I don't have anything to say to you if you don't have any feelings about people just dying for no reason. So it's like, F them at that point. I don't need you. F you, Like, if you don't know what's going on, there's something wrong with you at that point.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember exactly how you just asked that question.
Yeah, it was just to the people who, I guess, don't
Why
have a
should they
connection
care?
to what's going on. It's like, why should I care?
I think that is like a big misconception in when we talk about racism, and I feel like I keep making this point, but it is not on us. And so because you're not the recipient of the oppression, of the discrimination, of the negative things that come with racism, that does not mean you're not part of the problem, that you're not invested in this, that this doesn't also concern you, especially when you choose to live in a town that has a significant black population that are going to school with your white children that are growing up in your community, So to the people who don't feel this concerns them, if you have a child in District 65 and you're paying attention to the conversations that are happening right now, this concerns you. If you live in a ward that has a school that your child doesn't have to get bused to, this concerns you. Like, if you're living in COVID and you're not having to worry about medical bills, about I can pull a million reasons why this concerns you, and it shouldn't be that because we're the recipients of the problem, it's on us to fix it, if that makes sense. It's on us to make people care. And that, I don't know, this might be a tangent, but that just, it brings me back to a conversation I've been having with my dad, who's a black man, about defunding. And we've had like 5 conversations going back and forth on the word defunding and the word abolishing. And I finally got down to why is this word a problem for you? And it wasn't defunding. Doesn't have an issue with defunding the police, with abolishing the police. His issue is that me saying defunding is going to turn off so many white people to the idea. And like the fact that that's the mindset that like the people we're looking to, our role models, is that we can't actually say what we need because we've got to get the white people on board to do it. It's like, white people, if you want to be an ally, don't make us feel that way. Don't make us feel like we have to beg you and ask, like, please, 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 can we have freedom? Please, 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 can we not get murdered? Like, pay attention to what we're saying we need, and then do what you can to help us without critiquing, without delegitimizing it, without pushing it to the back burner and saying, yeah, that's important, but can we stop talking about equity for a second because I got to worry about other things, Like, it's all intertwined all the time, and all of your actions are directly affecting black people in your community. So I think the people who don't think it involves them, there's a lot of self-reflection that needs to follow that thought.
And going back to what Sarah said with them having a problem with the word defund, I feel like they also had a problem with the phrase Black Lives Matter. And they tried to turn it to All Lives Matter. Like, this isn't about you.
Yeah.
Or Blue Lives Matter.
Yeah, like they always try to twist our words and make it where it works for them. But it's like, this isn't about you. This is for us. And another point I wanted to make, I feel like even though we are fighting for change, every time black people do make a change, it like changes for everybody. Like, it's beneficial. So what we're asking isn't like, like we're about to help everybody out. Like everybody's
It's
about
like
to
we're
get some
about to
help.
help you.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah.
So I feel like once we make change, it's always change for someone else too. Like, Black women, when they make change for women, it's for white women. Like, they probably benefit more from it than we do. So I don't know why they just want to agree.
Damn, yeah, you better preach.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting close to the end of our conversation, but one of the last questions I want to ask you all is, we have contested elections this spring, and hopefully the mayoral candidates are watching this, and if they are, there are 3 of them. What do you hope they take away from this conversation, and what do you hope they learn about this moment that they can use to guide their campaign, but not only their campaign, because campaign season, you want to appeal to people, but also when they become mayor?
I think I'm going to reiterate the same point because I feel very strongly about it. If you're running for a position of power in this city, especially if you're white, you need to be making every decision with a racial justice lens, whether it's about the environment. If you're making a decision about sustainability, you make sure that it's not a burden on the Black community. If you're making a decision about education, you need to be prioritizing the Black and brown students. Don't say, oh, we've got to close this opportunity gap, but not actually do anything tangible to do it. So my ask is that, or demand, I don't know, is that you're not forgetting about the Black and brown population that lives here, and that is very much important to the way that this society thrives. And I think if you make a commitment, you need to stick to it. We had plenty of council members say they were all for defunding. They were all for all these great things. They care about Black lives. They care about Evanstonian lives. And then in the midst of a pandemic, vote on a budget that raises taxes. That doesn't make sense. So I think that's my point.
I agree totally with Sarah. I think even more so than look at it with the lens, you need to have people in the room.
Yes.
It's not just, you signing off on this thing. You need to have people like us, young people, Black people, queer people, white people, every color or race or whatever, however they identify, they need to be in the room. It's not enough to have other people who agree with you, like, on the board. I mean, there needs to be people who are actually affected by this. Random people. I mean, just random Evanstonian community members need to be in the room to give you that different opinion, that different viewpoint. So, yeah.
And I guess, lots of our conversation has been, for other people, for them to hear. And I just want to take the last bit of this conversation to just, talk to each other. And it's like, well, what advice could you give to a Black person? It's like, we're all going through the same thing. We all feel like crying all the time. It's like, what can we say to each other right now to uplift each other and, to give each other hope? And, one thing that I can give to you all is, just like Katia said, it's Black women have done so much in our history, but still historically one of the most silenced voices. People don't want to hear you because you have a lot to say, and it is important. And like we said about being in a system that everyone is so used to, they're like, no, I don't want to hear it because I'm comfortable. Black women are they make people uncomfortable because they want change, and that uncomfortability leads to advancements that benefit all people. Like
we
you
demand
said.
change.
Yeah, you demand change. Yeah, so I would just like to thank you for being available for this conversation and just for what you've done. And it's inspiring to me because I have a twin sister and I have an older sister and I have a mom. And I'm getting emotional. Oh my goodness. But Black women are so powerful. Everything that they've done has been to advance our lives, everyone's lives. So the work that everyone is doing on the stage, I would just like to, commend and say thank you from the bottom of my heart, from a Black guy who has benefited from what Black women do all the time. Thank you. So is there anything that you all want to add?
I think, and this is to everybody, but also Black people especially, I think we have to remember to fill our own buckets before we can give out to others. And I think with everything going on, I think it's important to find an outlet for our anger, because we've all got a lot of anger. For me, for Katia, that has been Evanston Fight for Black Lives, and if you don't know about that yet, I would say look us up on social media. We have a 27-page packet that detailed outlines what defunding the police would look like and what it would mean to replace them with qualified people.
And if you can read Becoming by Michelle Obama, you can read this packet.
Yeah, it will take you 30 minutes to read max, and I think if you have not yet and you're watching this, it's what you need to do as soon as this ends. But I think it's important to, take time for ourselves and find places to put our anger and our energy that feel productive so that we can continue doing positive things with our lives while also making change. Because while activism is very important, so is being happy and living. And that's part of what equality, that's what we're fighting for, is that we don't have to spend all our time being an activist. We just get to live like everybody else and get to enjoy things without being angry all the time.
Mm-hmm. Going off of what you were saying earlier, definitely believe in the power of your voice, get involved where you can, but know that you can't be everything to everybody all the time, and you've got to be who you need to be for yourself first. And mental health, take care of your mental health. If you can't find an outlet, whether that's artistically or within activism, there are many ways to get that emotion out in a healthy way. And you've got to prioritize that for yourself, because in the midst of all of this racial unrest and riots on the Capitol and, are we going to have a peaceful transfer of power? Probably, hopefully, maybe. We're still living through a pandemic. I think there's this false sense of security of it's 2021 and everything's better. No, it's not. Like you said, take care of yourself first.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm all for mental health and doing what you need to do to be okay, as long as it's, obviously not hurting other people. And just take care of yourself, because as we've seen sometimes, the world won't. So
Yeah. And of course, to remember that, we're enough. We're enough for ourselves. We have a mission here. We are beautiful people, even though what one would suggest from watching the news, we're not beautiful people, but we are. We're strong. We're powerful. We have a voice, and I would just like to thank you all for using your voices, and for everyone at home to continue to use your own voices to fight for change. So thank you, ladies, so much for this wonderful, wonderful conversation. This really filled me. Thank you, everyone at home, for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Tell someone how much you love them. I love you. Be kind and take care.